Sentire Media.
Welcome to the Stop Italian Sounding podcast, uncovering authentic Italian food. I'm your host, Robert Campana, and join me as we delve into the rich heritage of genuine Italian food, exploring its legends, history, and traditions. Through important tips and insightful interviews with industry professionals, you'll gain a deeper understanding of authentic Italian food. Welcome back, everyone, to the Stop Italian Sounding show, uncovering authentic Italian food. So, today's guest is Viviana Altieri, and she's the founder of Istituto Mondo Italiano, an organization dedicated to promoting Italian culture and language in Pittsburgh. Originally, she's from Rome, and she moved to Pittsburgh in the early 90s on a $100 bet, which is something I'm definitely going to have to ask her about because that sounds pretty fun. Over the years, she's turned her passion for the Italian heritage into a thriving cultural center where she teaches Italian language classes, organizes cooking workshops, and offers cultural events for adults and children. Additionally, she hosts the weekly podcast, The Italian Radio Hour, which I had the pleasure of joining not too long ago, where each episode she explores Italian culture, Italian food traditions, and the Italian American identity. And when not in Pittsburgh, she's probably somewhere in Italy traveling off the beaten path, which we'll have to ask her about, to discover the many hidden treasures that Italy has to offer. So Viviana, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day.
Grazie, Robert. Nice meeting everyone, so to speak. It's, that a conversation about food and Italy with you, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you. So I mentioned a minute ago that you moved to the United States on a $100 bet. So could you tell us a little bit about that? Because I did not know. And what inspired you to start, once you got here, Istituto Mondo Italiano?
Okay, so that is when life takes you in a direction that you would never have expected. So during my college years, my degree was in international business administration. So I carried English and Russian throughout the program, and before defending my thesis in those languages, I decided to go to Moscow and attend the University of Moscow for a semester. In those years, or at least where I was staying, it was full of American students. So I made great friends, especially with one student from Duquesne University, which is a prestigious university here in Pittsburgh. And whenever the semester was over, she returned to Pittsburgh. I returned to Rome, which is my hometown. And we kept in touch until she got sponsored again to attend a conference in economics in Rome, checked whether I was available to take them around because she was coming with her professor and another student. I did what we call le ho fatto da cicerone. So I showed her all the places that people have to see in Rome and more. And on their last night, as they were thanking me for the hospitality, they say, why don't you come and visit us in Pittsburgh? And those 5 seconds of hesitation prompted the other student to say, I bet $100 you never leave your mama.
And, so that's not an easy thing to do.
Serious? Well, actually, I think I was born with itchy feet. I had studied also I was enamored with anything Irish. Making
Irish.
Friends. Yes, I had studied in Ireland, and I actually had got a job at the university in Ireland prior to this bet coming through. So we shook hands. He gave me a couple of months to fulfill my bet, put them on the plane, went to defend my thesis the following morning. I probably looked like a raccoon, but it was well. But the tough thing was then to address the conversation with my parents. It's like, instead of going to Dublin, I think I'm going to take a detour. My friend that I had met in Moscow was very instrumental in putting me in touch with a government organization that, as soon as they saw my background and language skills, sponsor me. And those were other times. So it was back and forth between Italy and Pittsburgh. When the city was not as international as it is now, there is a strong Italian-American population. So I felt I was the only Italian here that was starting to get to know people and their experiences. Just to briefly connect to where I'm at right now, I had a wonderful career in high tech, traveled the world, and I found myself enjoying very much what I was doing, but I was losing contact with the community that had welcomed me so warmly, about 15 years prior. And I wanted to create something that was meaningful to me and to the people. And Pittsburgh is famous for its bridges. Supposedly, we have three more than Venice.
Wow,
And
that I did not know.
well, it's also depends what you define as a bridge.
True, that's true.
Not an architect, but I know that we're not always referring to the glamorous, bridges that you take pictures or you go under the gondola. But I wanted to create a physical center because there are a lot of clubs, this club, that club, that was open to anyone, whether they were of Italian descent or going to Italy or studying in Italy. So that will connect all these different shades of Italianità, because everyone experienced their being Italian differently, whether they are from Italy, they came here 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 20 years ago, two generations ago, and just be there for everyone who wanted to share the stories, learn about the culture, the language, the cooking. And we have also an online shop that we are preparing for. So we're maybe probably except for Christmas Day and New Year's Eve, we serve the community, well, 363 days a year.
It's definitely a 24-hour job to run and serve the community, as you just said. So that's great. That first of all, complimenti for you taking the leap of faith and you know creating this by moving from Italy. You were supposed to go to Dublin, and you moved to Pittsburgh, and now you run Istituto Mondo Italiano. So I give you a lot of credit, and you're doing a great job with that. So how does food? Of course, it plays a huge role when it comes to the Italian culture, and also when learning about the language. So that how does that play a role in your mission to promote the Italian
Well,
culture in that area?
I think so. We study Istituto Mondo Italiano study first with language programs and summer camps for kids. So we really embrace, from 3 years old to the 90s, and then so we kind of create a little bit of interest in the language, but we realized the food was going to be the international language that everyone can speak anytime, several times a day, and quite fluently, I have to say.
Yes, fluently
And
is the key word.
and I think the first class that we ever held was a tiramisu class. We had about 30 people and all with their mixers and everything. But it was not just about the recipe of a dish that a dessert that everyone loves. It's probably one of the most renowned or popular Italian desserts all over the world. When you go to an Italian restaurant in any country, tiramisu seems to be and omnipresent.
Of
But
course.
what it started to create in me was a curiosity into finding out the historical period of the recipe, not only tiramisu, but we'll talk a little bit about what we did during COVID. And the legends and the myths, some that have been debunked over the years, others that stuck.
But are still fun. They're still fun to recount. Legends are fun to recount.
Exactly. And with tiramisu, that you can really go as far as it became also a very popular dessert because it has aphrodisiac properties, because of the ingredients it contains. So, and I think that might contribute also to why tiramisu has spread out so quickly, and people responded to it. Everyone goes home with their final product. When we do make our pasta classes are longer in format, we make it, and I divulge some information about ingredients we talked about in our conversation prior to this interview. And people feel that the takeaway is not just a full belly, but also something else that was added to their knowledge. And I say, use it as a trivia question next time with your friends. And we have sometimes even prizes. It's really, you are an educator yourself, and when people are having fun or they learn by doing, things are much more received and absorbed than just lecturing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what specifically do your students, I guess I could consider them your students or the participants, want to know about Italian food? If they're mainly Italian American, what are the curiosities about Italian food or Italian food products?
So what happens is, the we do have also a huge percentage of people that are not of Italian American descent, but they might be foodies, or they're just very curious in mastering their skills, because this is a place where it's hands-on, relax. We're not by the clock. Okay, everyone needs to be done by in 2 hours and then go. It's almost like opening my house to new crowds every single Sunday. So they like to know about the provenance of the ingredients. Probably was one of the most common questions is, where do I get the best olive oil?
Olive oil is always a big question.
And I actually have a little bit of a skewed answer, because I say probably the best olive oil, you'll never get to it unless you are in Italy and that small producer, because of the way that the timings that olives get pressed. When you have small producers and just one common press in a town, there is probably a schedule where all producers are guaranteed that their olives are pressed within, I don't know, few hours from being picked. When you do have bigger producers and you have truckloads, those olives are going to sit there for a little bit. So, as I said, yeah, and also, the smaller producers probably will serve local markets. Maybe they're not geared to export, and that's unfortunately a pity unless you know someone that a distributor or so forth. And olive oil should be consumed within a year. And we know that sometimes stores they're not going to toss those crates of unsold olive oil, it's kind of, you have to read the labels. And you and I are like very like-minded on that.
When I food shop, I'm literally looking at I could go in for 5 things and it'll take me an hour because I'm reading every single thing on the label. I want to know exactly what I'm getting, especially in today's day and age. You don't know what you're buying, so I want to make sure I'm getting the best possible thing, because if we're eating it, it's going in our body, and I'm not a believer in buying low quality things if I'm going to put it in my body. That's the first thing I have to look after.
Your body will reflect what you eat. And then one mission of my cooking class is, no matter what it is, whether it's pasta class or the Italian street food, is also to make it approachable and expose people to foods. We specialize also in foods that you don't find in restaurants here in Pittsburgh. It's almost like we want to take them to Italy, to that specific region, without a hassle of flying there and the costs, so that when they do go there, they're not afraid of ordering something that they were not initially familiar with, that they thought that they couldn't pronounce, and they'll end up eating pizza and lasagna everywhere, and missing out on the and then say, get curious, because I'm sure the restaurateurs or wherever are there to answer questions.
Absolutely.
About the products.
It's been my
proud of that.
It's been my experience. Exactly. It's been my experience that they're very proud, and they want you to be curious about their local cuisine. And in fact, it leads me to my next question. I was thinking of what are some, according to you, lesser known Italian dishes that Americans might not be familiar with that you think they should get to know?
Well, if we want to stay basic, there are, I think, over 400 types of pasta in Italy. They are very regional. So, people might be familiar with tagliatelle, fettuccine, but we have some very intricate pasta shapes coming from Sardinia, and they're typically semolina and water, versus the tagliatelle being a flour and egg-based type of dough. There are gnocchi. They're not made out of potatoes. There are gnocchi that also are pulled just with the fingers, and they're called the gnocchi ricci, like curled gnocchi. There are many spaghetti all'assassina. If you go to Puglia, the killer, which is actually the spaghetti are cooked in sauce, which, when you see the video, it's like, that's the and the TikTok, wherever. No,
it's for real. Exactly.
Burned.
Could you explain that process? Because I think in Italian this is called risottare, correct? So it's very similar.
Yeah,
it's similar to making risotto, more or less, the way spaghetti all'assassina is made.
Exactly. So you kind of use your liquid, your sauce or whatever it is, to finish the cooking process, or the ingredients are cooked in that. Versus, we have also mantecatura. Like often when pasta is never served as a side dish. Pasta
Right.
has its own identity. So I think this is
That's
also
one
another
thing we're trying to promote. That's a battle I'm trying to fight.
enjoy for all its glamours and beauty. And but sometimes also when it's served on a side, I call it the naked pasta, because you just see these white noodles and just a big scoop of sauce on top of it. Whereas in Italy, there is the final step of that is called mantecatura,
That's a great
where
word. I love that
you
word.
might have yes, you might have your skillet, because usually restaurants, good restaurants, they'll kind of prepare every single portion at a time, where you have the chef with the skillet that is going with the sauce or the creamy sauce, that is going to bring the pasta, that quantity, into this. And if necessary, a little bit of the pasta water is extremely starchy, and then let them kind of swirl together. And maybe it's even like 1 minute prior to al dente, so that it's not overcooked when
Right.
he or she is ready to plate it. So no naked pasta.
No naked pasta. Exactly.
Sorry,
Exactly.
I just don't know.
Mantecatura.
They look so pale. They just look like they need a little help.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. You got to dress them up a little bit. Mantecatura is the key word. So to kind of finish the cooking together with the sauce. And it makes a huge difference as well to the taste of the dish. So how do it? Yep.
May I just add something else? I have to. You asked me, what might be some of the less known dishes to the Italian Americans, but I wanted to add that also there are a lot of dishes that are unknown to the Italians from the boot, because I bet there is a very, 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 very small percentage of people that have traveled throughout the 20 regions. I'm up to 19, and
Okay.
if I hadn't been for
Which
a
one are you
family,
missing?
Val d'Aosta.
Ah, Valdosta.
Yeah, so if I hadn't been for a little family emergency this past summer, I would have put my little flag pole there, so I conquer all the 20. And also within every region, you have a great variety from town to town and family traditions. So as I said, to know Italian food as a whole, God bless who has done that, because it is indeed. So there are a lot of dishes that are unknown to the Italians. And yeah, and like for instance, just to get back into the questions of the spaghetti and meatballs, which has also an interesting story behind who has researched how spaghetti and meatballs came together. But I think it was related to when Louis Prima was interviewed after a concert and asked what was his favorite food. He said spaghetti and meatballs, but the ad agency or the photographer that put the picture for the article combined the two. So it was, but anyway, there is, typically if you go to Italy, you will not see that on the menu. But if you go to Abruzzo, it's a must to try, which is spaghetti alla chitarra, where they use this guitar-shaped pasta, e pallottini. They're small, teeny tiny meatballs. And that's a local specialty. So it does have a little bit of a historical, there is a bridge indeed between that tradition and here maybe got enlarged or maybe got changed wherever.
Exactly. Because
But
Italians, when they came to the United States, they found riches and success. So they also wanted to show that off in abundance when cooking, and meat
Mhm.
tend to be a little cheaper here compared to at the time back in Italy as well. But yeah, you must have read my mind, because I just posted a video about spaghetti alla chitarra con le
Ah!
panettine. So
It's one of my favorite things to always show how to use the chitarra. I think making pasta, no matter what it is, by hand, it's a very soothing experience. We were at a food event just this past weekend, and we served over 700 of attendees. And when I say served, we were not necessarily cooking. We made 5 different types of noodles that I had never seen before, different types of pasta represented different regions of Italy. And we had a station where everyone could give it a try. So we had from people, little children, almost like in strollers, all the way to their grandparents, give it a try. And it was so rewarding. That was, it allowed us, not to lecture people. Oh, there are 20 regions in Italy where it's like do it, and it's like, oh, this type of pasta comes from here and was made, and it
Learn
was a
by
dialogue.
doing.
Hmm.
That's nice. It's very rewarding as well. Learn by doing. Learn
Hmm.
by doing. So you said that you traveled to 19 out of the 20 regions and you're missing Valle d'Aosta. Have you found any surprises when it comes to regional specialties throughout your travels? Some things that you didn't know, well, probably many things that you didn't know existed that do exist, or something quite interesting that you've seen?
Well, let me tell a little bit about how I travel. I only I only get my airline ticket and my first one, maximum 2 nights booked. Okay, and it depends whether I'm traveling by myself or with or with my husband. But he's accustomed to it, and it kind of has trust me over the years that it's also a great way of just exploring things that. You never thought that would come your way. And like for instance, when I went to Sardinia, there was indeed one lady who calls herself, a farmer, una contadina, but her family actually owned the property, and they had farmers, but it was not a huge property. And she lived the life of the fields, so she, in spirit, she's a contadina. And I loved her work. She makes these breads that are usually dedicated to specific holidays, where you have tweezers and little scissors, and they look like a dot. They're very intricate. So I reached out to her and I said, I would love to learn how to make it. And I don't know, she said, who are you writing from America? And I said, no, I'm coming. And so I went. First, I flew into Cagliari, and a little bit jet lagged. And I always rent a car so I can get lost whenever and wherever I want.
Best way to
And
do it.
yeah, and then I turned on the TV, and they were talking about the local news. One about the king of the smallest kingdom in the world, which is the island of Tavolara. So I wrote the name down. And then the other one is that there was going to be their biggest expo of crafts and Sardinian crafts, and that was going to last for 2 weeks. So I mapped them and went first to this beautiful expo that gave me right there in one place. I need, fabrics, silver traditions, corals, cork, you name it, clothes, costumes. Then I took the names of the artists because they were not there; they were just selling their wear. Took me a little longer to get hold of the king of Tavolara, but I did manage, and it was on my last day.
It's pretty cool.
And so I got to interview. And then when I met finally this lady, we made different types of. We made fregola. We make lorighitas. We started to work on the su filindeo, which is,
I
the
was going to ask you about that, the sufilindeo, the threads of
it's
God.
such a complex. Um, it's an enterprise to get there. You have to really know your dough and the degree of humidity and pliability to really be successful. And then we actually held a class in a shop of a guy who used to be, I don't remember if he was an electrician, and then he always had very good manual skills. He started to make pasta wheels, and these are the most intricate pasta wheels that you will ever see, and are ideal for those breads, those edges that need certain spikes and everything. And I said, did you go on then and see the Museum of Music, where there are these huge stones and everything carved in a certain way that when you, with your fingers, you kind of flicker through them, they do music. And then the next person sent me, did you go here? Did you? That was 2 weeks of um, unexpected surprises, and also a connection to my family roots that I'm still researching, because my mom had a gold medallion that was passed on to me. She's no longer with us, but I know that my family is from Puglia, and the exact gold medallion is in the Museum of Nuoro, which is one of the main cities there. And I'm still trying to figure out.
One of the
We
main
don't
cities in
have,
Sardinia.
yeah, and why we have something that is exactly like something is in a museum, and we don't know of any Sardinian ancestors.
So you have a family secret that you're trying to get to the bottom of.
Yeah, unfortunately, and no one to ask to. So another maybe key thing is ask your questions, any questions to your parents, your grandparents, when you can still get them to give you answers, and engage, please, please, please engage the little kids in conversations. Again, they don't have to sit at the table now. We're going to give you the family story or history. There is a disconnect in also in the curiosity that we had. I mean, growing up, you sat at the table and you didn't get up until you were done eating and everyone was done eating. So you had to listen to these conversations where you were, and somehow they sunk, they stuck with you. So you kind of, and now I don't see that being the case that frequently. I don't know. I might be,
But we
I
could
don't know.
we could reinstate that on a person by person or family by family basis,
Exactly,
and it's
exactly.
something you could teach in your Istituto as well, which I'm sure you're teaching good values, good table values and convivialità type of values as well, conviviality. So if we go back to your cooking classes, for example, there are a lot of people that go and learn about different dishes and learn how to make them, of course. But what is your advice for someone in the U.S. looking to create authentic Italian meals at home, even if they don't have access to certain ingredients? I'm not sure how easy it is to get certain ingredients in Pittsburgh.
So I actually have my own definition of authenticity. Authentic, if I make something, is authentic. If you make something, is authentic. Okay. So
Authentically made by me and you.
it's an authentic experience. Okay. Now, there are certain recipes and products that have been codified. Okay. This is a long tradition of, again, you and why am I preaching to the choir? Obviously, everyone is listening to you, know about the certifications and the guarantees that those certifications provide to the consumers. Okay. So we have to figure out what is really authentic. Cooking a meal with your family is an authentic experience. Now, if you want to get as close as possible to the codified recipe, have fun researching, okay? And I'm sure even for the same recipe, you're probably going to find so many variations, and eventually you have to choose the one that maybe has the best ingredients that you have access to, taste the best to you, and and at least knowing that you have researched, you have done your best to replicate, and maybe even by when we look at frittata, when we look at what is called the wedding soup, la minestra maritata, people open their fridges and saw what they left. So what was left in your grandparents' fridge was different from what was left in my grandparents' fridge. So, but it was still called minestra maritata, right? And just the name is not that people made this soup on a wedding day, but maritato means wedded. It was made with ingredients that kind of play well with one another.
Hmm. Based on
So
what
as
they
I said,
had.
yeah, we have to think about innovation right now. The big trend is to elevate, take those whole world dishes and add maybe a truffle oil instead of the just,
Right.
so
So how do you
food.
innovate while respecting tradition at the same time? Because I think it's important to innovate when it comes to cuisine and comes to food products as well, while respecting tradition at the same time, which could be challenging.
Yeah. So as I said, it depends what direction you would like to do. Whether again you wanted to present something as traditional to as possible, or purposely you said, okay, this time, instead of making it this way, I'm going to, maybe you replicate the process, like the risottare. It's a process, it's not a recipe. And then instead of doing with a piece, you're going to do with something else. So again, but that's a conscious effort. I wanted to try something else and maybe invent a new dish. So if we look at the arancini slash arancine, um, it is, when you go to Sicily in certain places, oh, the saffron, it's a must. And then you go to another town in Sicily and they don't use saffron. If you order arancini here in the US, hardly you're going to find saffron. It's a very expensive
Exactly. I've never found saffron here.
ingredient. And the other day we had in an establishment, there was a lot of garlic. I never had arancini with garlic before, and we were all Italians, and we kind of was like, that's pushing a little bit. It would have been very nice to be just a cheese ball, because often it's some sort of cheese ball, but that additional garlic didn't play out well. So the coating was nice and crispy, but so that was our personal take. I'm sure I'm sure they were still very popular with the rest of the crowd, but yeah.
Exactly. Let's talk a second about your podcast. So you host a podcast called the Italian Radio Hour. I had the pleasure of participating in an episode not too long
So
ago.
stay tuned, because you're going to hear Robert coming up in a couple of weeks. Yes.
Yes. I can't wait. I can't wait until that is released. How has hosting that podcast influenced your understanding of Italian cuisine, let's just say, and its role in the Italian American culture and identity?
Well, it's been a fascinating and still a very fascinating journey. So just kind of, to preamble this, when I came to the United States, I was 23 years old. I had traveled throughout Europe, and a panino, a little sandwich was just fine. My paternal grandmother was an excellent cook. So growing up, and when we would go and see them during Christmas, I would help her. I had these teeny tiny, I still have small hands, and she said, "Oh, hai le mani calde," which I guess it's a compliment if you have warm hands when you're making dough. So we knew what good food was, but my father cooks amazing. My mom is no longer with us, but she was very good. My brother is amazing. My sister is amazing. Here I am. It was okay to sit at the table and eat, but I've never devoted any time to cooking except for making scones for my Irish face, the Irish face of my life. So I never really spend any time reading recipes or being curious about food. I mean, when you're in Italy, you kind of take it for granted that everything's
Right.
good, and it is the case. So when I got here, we started with the cooking classes and then the podcast. And I worked also for Italian American magazine, where people would send in the recipes and I would go over them and so forth. With the Italian Radio Hour and the pandemic, I have to say, I have on Friday, I come on at noon on Facebook and I do live cooking demos. And I really started to dig into those recipes and books. Almost it became a good obsession because we needed to be kept busy, right?
Exactly. During that time
And
period.
I'm lucky that the supermercato, the supermarket, is just almost across the street from me. So despite how bad the pandemic, it was like a mask. I was going to the supermarket pretty much every single day. So what we have had very interesting episodes on the Italian Radio Hour with people that have researched the development of Italian American food, which was a component of my knowledge that I'm not been I've not been raised here. So I'm really hungry, no pun intended, for information to understand and to connect and say, okay, some of these traditions, are they indigenous? Are they local? Or can we trace them back to something that happened in Italy, whether it was a region, and at times that comes out as, yes, someone came and then, for instance, the use of garlic that seems to be a little more prominent in the Italian American cuisine versus in Italy. But there is an historical reason for it. When our fellow immigrants came to the United States, they were not the wealthiest. They didn't, and they didn't have access to the same ingredients they had in Italy. So it's a sign of ingenuity. They're trying to see what can I afford that is going to enhance the flavor of the foods that we're going to put on the table. And garlic was the answer. And then once you start using an ingredient, you really get accustomed to wanting to have that flavor. So when people say, "Oh, this is too garlicky," yeah, maybe it is too garlicky. But if depending on the crowd I'm with, I said, understand the historical reasons behind it. It's not just that someone went to the supermarket to the market. I would say got a head of garlic and said, "I'm just going."
They're
So
using what they had. They're using the available
and
resources
we
that they
have
had.
to be, everyone has to be a little more humble, and understanding of, being a different historical period. And the fact that the evolution of both Italian American cuisine and also the continuous evolution in Italian food is creating different identities, and they're both worth respecting. We just
Absolutely.
have to educate ourselves about it. So instead of
100%.
fingers and divide ourselves, so that's so
I couldn't. No, no. You said it perfectly. I couldn't agree anymore. You said it perfectly. Both to be 100% respected, both with their respective traditions and histories. And I like how you used the word ingenuity. With the Italian immigrants that came over and had to use the resources that they had at the time, garlic being one of them. And we could consider that a form of innovation, as we were talking about a few minutes ago as well. So, Viviana, I want to be respectful of your time, but I have one last question. Given all the extensive travels you've done in Italy, for anyone planning a trip to Italy, what are some off the beaten path food destinations or culinary experiences that you would recommend?
Well, if we're talking about culinary experiences, there are, like for instance, in the Emilia-Romagna region, there are now the museums of foods. So there are a series of museums. They're all devoted to a product. They even have like a pass that lasts a whole year where you can go, and they're all geographically very close to one another. So if you're don't have that many days, you can concentrate and maybe do a couple of museums for the Emilia Romagna is kind of the cradle. You have the Parmigiano Reggiano, you have the Aceto Balsamico. They call it the slow food fast cars. So maybe you can even go and see some. um, if you go to some other regions like Piedmont, but also Marche, you can do a truffle hunt. Obviously, you got to plan based on the seasonality of the products.
Right.
And also, August is a great time throughout Italy for what we call sagre, which are usually festivals dedicated to either a patron saint or a specific food, whether it could be, la sagra delle fragole, strawberry, or funghi porcini, or it might be, for instance, when I was in Sardinia, I tried, I can't even cocoedos, I can't even pronounce them. So just look at, we did an episode on Sagre of Italy, and plan your food, your travels and travel dates maybe accordingly to when you're more likely to and where you're more likely to run into a food festival. And often in a lot of regions, you will see the traditional costumes that might have a parade, especially if it is more of a patron saint type of celebration. So those are, you can find them throughout Italy. So pointing you in the direction of one region over another. This year is the year of the root tourism. So maybe start with the region where your ancestors came from and explore it to get a deeper connection with it, and then go to the neighboring region or where the locals will tell you that you should definitely go.
Absolutely, absolutely, and Italy is a nation full of so many different local identities, which is manifested in food and in accent and language and everything. and in traditions and sagre, like you said. So sagre is the key word I think we're going to take away with this. Viviana, thank you so much for coming on the show. How can anyone reach you if they want to email you, or do you have a website or Instagram?
A little bit of everything to learn about all the different programming that we do offer. And even for the language classes and the cooking classes, we have also the online component. So it is best Istituto Mondo Italiano.org. And again, there is no N in Istituto because we keep the Italian spelling. By my name on Facebook, Viviana Altieri Mondo Italiano. And then if you come on Friday at noon Eastern time, you will see me whipping up something. And Instagram the same. And the Italian Radio Hour is my little pride and joy. Give it a listen, give it a subscribe. The same way that people have been following you. The more sources you get access to, I think the more comprehensive your understanding and experience is of Italian American food, culture, and Italy as a whole.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree anymore. And I'll put all that information in the show notes as well. So, Viviana, grazie mille. Thank you so much. It was a great conversation.
Thank you all. Ciao, ciao.
Grazie, ciao. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the stories of authentic Italian cuisine. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more insights and interviews. Also, feel free to reach out with your thoughts or questions on our social media channels at Stop Italian Sounding or on our website, stopitasounding.com. Grazie a tutti e alla prossima.
Sentire Media.
Hey, podcast producers and show hosts. Do you want to join a podcast network that celebrates all things Italian? At Sentire Media, we understand the allure of Italy and its unique culture. Our devoted team of hosts and producers are all driven by their shared passion for Italy. And we work tirelessly to create the best lifestyle podcasts and content that will whisk you away to the very heart of Italy. With us, you can savor the mouth-watering flavors, get lost in the stories from the past, break down the cultural barriers, and truly immerse yourself in the vibrant traditions of this intoxicating country. If you have a great podcast idea or are already in production and would like to join Sentire Media, head over to sentiremedia.com, that's SENTIRE media.com, and find out how to submit your show.